Hi HR Nation, welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives in the world's leading global brands. Today, I'm super excited about having this guest on the show. It's taken us a long while, but we made it happen. We're joined by Ad Boon, who's a Chief HR Officer, Executive Coach, and is now the CEO and founder of Boon. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, Chris. I'm very good. I'm happy to be here. It's very nice.
I feel like I've been stalking you for your entire career.
You what?
I feel like I've been stalking you for your entire career, all the way from the GE days, all the way to where we are now. I've kind of, you probably had a few sales calls from me over the year trying to sell you to come to our events. So it's nice to have you on the show.
But I've also learned to appreciate your events as well. Like we talked about the event last week where, you know, there was chaos, but there was always like really nice content. And you learn, I mean, I know you run a good show, so thank you for doing that on behalf of all of us.
No worries. Just for context, everyone, we had a panel, online panel discussion last week, and the Chief HR Officer of Krispy Kreme was having the Christmas party in the background whilst live on our event, which was just like, you couldn't even make it up. It was crazy, but in a good way, right? That's the thing. It's like bringing your full self to the table, like she mentioned, right? This is who I am. This is and being unapologetic about it.
Yeah, no, but you know how hard it is sometimes in meetings to get everybody to bring their full vulnerability and informal selves, and therefore it creates this flow of creativity. And that's what happened, because I think you had 4 questions prepared and you only asked one.
Yeah, 40 minutes. Yeah, 40 I asked minutes. One question and it was like 40 minutes in. And it's one of those ones as a facilitator, because the conversation was flowing quite well, it's like, do I interrupt it or do I just let it go? And I find sometimes
you did the right thing.
Just let it go. Like they're the experts, you know, if they want to ask each other questions to go back and forth, because I think the worst thing is if you have a script that you have to, you know, question 1, and then you ask everyone question 2, and it just becomes, it's not really a great.
No, there's a recent bestseller in the US right now with a book called The Art of the Impossible. Mm-hmm. And one of the concepts they talk about is the flow of creativity. And what you do as a leader, you have to do as a leader. If you have that flow, you need to be strict, be prepared, make sure everybody's there, and there's a preparation for the meeting. But also you need to be flexible. So when these things happen, you need to let it go, because the creativity just creates this content which makes everybody happy. And also for your listeners, it was insightful. So I think you did the right thing.
Yeah.
It's like pat you on the back, but you did the right thing.
Yeah. It's funny because our partner after, I was worried about, we have obviously different partners and sponsors. I was like, are they going to be upset about that? But they also loved that, right? The fact that it was like not normal in the sense of it was organized chaos and fun and informative. It has to be fun and informative. And back to your point about creativity, if you put too many tight reins on it or too much structure, you'll never get to those areas. You'll never come up with those new ideas and new innovations, because you're trying to fit everything in a box as well.
And look, and that's where people don't want to be there. People don't want to be in a box. So you did the right thing. Yeah. So thank you for doing it.
Are you probably finding that now, right? Because when we started the company, one of the biggest takeaways looking back now, which is super refreshing, is after working in a large organization with so much red tape and sign-off processes, the fact that you can have an idea and then just go and try it out and execute it was so freeing to me and to Shane and the team to be like, we don't need to have a conversation about it. Let's just try it. Was we could never do that before, because we had to get sign off and this and that and PR and comms and legal and everything. I was like, how about we just stop thinking whether it'll work and go and try, and then we'll find out. And I love that process.
Yeah, but that's also how I think, even in bigger corporations, we can create that, right? It's just a mindset. So I think what we do is this is what we've learned at GE. This is what we learned at Walmart. This is wherever we went. This is how things go. So we end up at these companies with these preconceived notions about this is how I should work. We forget that if we let that all go and we just go unguarded, unrestrained, more entrepreneurial into new situations, not bringing this whole baggage, we become more free. And we do that because we do these startups. And you and I have both done this startup, which is great. But I don't see any reason why I would not be able to go into a corporate world and not do the same thing. It's
Yeah.
harder because you get more resistance and you need to create more advocacy with the people around you. Maybe, build up credibility first. But when that moment happens where you think, I have some credibility, let go. Bring your whole, be human first is what we always say. Just let go and just try to think, this is how I would like to do it. And just try to do that.
Yeah.
That makes it unrestrained.
Before we go any further, tell everyone a little bit more about you and your journey to where you are now and what you're up to at the moment, because you've had a fascinating career, and I'm really excited about the work that you're doing now as well. So share more with everyone about that.
Yeah, I can. So from the Netherlands, father, 6 kids, married to Miriam for 22 years. Most likely my biggest, feat.
6 kids, just you already. I was stressed out just thinking of 6 kids, let alone having 6 kids.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful. Don't do it. Right? It's just advice to everybody listening. But then, business administration as a background, did HR for the last 30 years, started at GE, and then ABB. I went to Philips, which then became NXP, went back to Philips, and then left after 20 years with Philips to do executive coaching, but also take chief HR officer roles whenever I needed to for clients. So I did that at Qatar Airways. I did it at Norgine, which is a pharma company. Qatar Airways obviously is an airline. And I do executive coaching. So in my career, I've done sort of every imaginable HR role, including the specialist role, except for the comp and ben role. Although I'm okay.
You probably don't regret that.
No, I think it's such a specialist role, right?
It really is.
Yeah, I think that role, next to the talent acquisition role, which has become really strategic and specialized, and you need to know a lot, including the technology around it. I think it's a more complicated role, even the HR operations, including the work days and all these things. But I've all the other roles I did, but I think I've done mostly transformations, like bigger corporate transformations in my life. But I think if I look back, and that's why I went into the field of work that I'm in right now, is that where I've been most comfortable is making sure you're successful. Just trying to figure out what is it that you need as a human being, as a professional, but also as a team member, and sometimes as a person who climbs on stage and needs to have impact and bring clarity to the organization. What is it that you need? And that's what I did most, or at least I enjoyed doing that most, and to bring that advice. So I thought, after leaving Philips, after this long career, which has been great, I mean, nothing but respect about Philips, I wanted to do that type of work, just helping leaders across the world, wherever we can. And I didn't want to do it by myself, Chris, because I did try to do it by myself, but it's just lonely.
I couldn't do what I do without the team, by the way. Like when I see people that start, like they're like solopreneurs, like, and they're on their own, I'm like, I don't know. I just don't even understand how you do that and take on everything. Like I would break. I don't think I could do it.
Yeah, and I know you had this, career as a chef as well. So I know you're highly resilient, and you're stress resilient too. But with that said, work can destroy us. Work can really sort of break us, and we don't have to do it by ourselves. We don't have to do it alone. So I also wanted to bring that into my coaching. And if you want to, help the CEO, you want to help his team too, his or her team. And you can't do that for all these companies if you're just by yourself. So you want to build a team which is sort of geographically this person situated, it represents or mirrors the presence of the global team. And that's what I've built with, and it's a reality now, and it's a strategy for me now, but it didn't start as a strategy. I just pulled people together that somehow found it really cool to work together, that just were kindred spirits and connected. And no doubt you're doing it exactly the same
100%.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's become a strategy now. So I try to, of course, I still try to extend my group of coaches at the PCC level, which is like, they're experienced coaches. But I need to feel that, hey, if this person would fit in, the other people would light up, would get more energy from that person, and they would learn from that person. So that's how I'm working now, Chris, and we're
Nice.
supporting leaders mostly in Silicon Valley right now, startup entrepreneurs, founders, but also we're now starting to move more into Europe and Asia with sort of more global teams. So highly rewarding work.
Amazing. I just want to go back for a second because I'm always fascinated of what does it look like? You mentioned you went into Norgine and Qatar Airways as a would you call it an interim CHRO? Is that what you how would you? Yeah. What does that look like? How different is that? Because is it more challenging than working in a traditional role, or is it like just out of interest? If anyone of the leaders that are listening right now ever are considering doing something like that in the future, I've never asked that question to anyone. What was that like?
Well, I think it's in a way, and I really never thought about it, but it's not easier. Because I think you want to have the same impact. So you get there and you need to make an impact fast, right? So you need to do it fast. You need to build credibility, rapport, impact fast. You need to understand the organization faster than you would normally do, like a 180-day plan or first 90 days plan. But it's also less constrained in some way because like the topic that you and I discussed in terms of chief HR being a coach, it's easier in a way because you're not recruited by the person that you need to coach in such a way that your career depends upon it, right? It's more free, it's more objective, it's more honest in a way. It doesn't mean you can't stay there for a few years if it works out or there is a need. But in a way, it's you can be more like yourself. You can be more honest and you be more pointy with your advice. So from that perspective, I like it. And I like I said before, I won't rule out that at some point I'll go back into a longer term, a chief HR officer role. But for now, the fact that I know it's short, I need to have an impact. I need to be brutally honest. I need to point out and be courageous enough to point out those things that are controversial. And the CEO or the executive team most likely doesn't want to hear, and then to provide some advice, and then really build strong pillars, foundational pillars in place to have an impact fast. So when you leave, it's still going to be there. I think that's just enjoyable.
No, I bet it must be quite refreshing though, right? Because there's this pressure sometimes when it's your full-time gig and your full-time job that you don't really want to rustle the feathers maybe, or be, as transparent and, say it how it is where people are afraid to do so. Whereas I suppose there's a bit of freedom, like you said, to be able to, this is why I'm coming in. This is why you brought me in. I'm only here for this time. So you kind of have no choice but to do that. Yeah,
but at the same time, Chris, now talking and thinking about it, when you're in that situation, I don't think you really think about, I only have this time, so I need to have this impact. At some point, you just become, I think if you're doing it well and you do it with your heart and you're really, sometimes you say purpose is the thing that we're willing to die for, and then we're living for it, right? So that's just a nice way of positioning the purpose. But if you let go of the time aspect, as soon as you're in that role and you become that honest, then it's really honest. Then it's really free. But then you don't think of that. I mean, I'm just going to be here for a few months, so who cares? That aspect will never be there. I don't think there's a chief HR officer in the world. No. And I really have credibility. I mean, I believe in humanity, and I believe in the righteousness of the chief HR officers in this world, because it's a big, impactful, hard job to do, almost like your chef role. I think they're honest people. So I think they will let go of that time aspect, but you just don't think about it. Yeah. Long answer.
Is that a thing though? That you agree on the particular time up front? Like, is that how it works?
Well, I think you come in with a question to say, like, can you fix this, or can you bring normality here, or can you bring balance? And what I found in both occasions is that there is somebody who can do the job.
Really?
I mean, particularly in Norgine, there was somebody that can do or could do their job. As good as I am, as decision-making as I am, as long-term and short-term orientated at the same time, so I'm really ambidextrous. but somehow just didn't get the opportunity, or it wasn't picked up. And then, yeah, you try to groom a person like that, bring them more and more to the exposure of that particular level, and then then you can leave. And sometimes, like with Qatar, it was slightly more difficult, because there's also a personal situation where the person who was ready wasn't really available at that point in time. Then it takes a bit longer, but yeah, usually you find good people in these teams, right? And there's always somebody ready, but sometimes just not picked up.
Yeah, that happens a lot though. Like more than companies are very quick to look externally at hiring a CHRO before they look internally at the existing team. Why do you think that is? Because I hear about that a lot.
I think sometimes is that because the CEO already has a rapport with that particular HR person, not right now the chief HRO he's working with, but they have exposure to the to the more senior HR people, and maybe it's somehow they don't want to make themselves vulnerable towards these people, right? And because they know them already, and these people know them with their downsides and their where they're not so strong, etc. And maybe they just don't look forward to getting advice from these types of people. I would just say, first of all, I think there's so many external chief HR officers being appointed to these roles that it's sometimes unfair to the people internally, because they spend their lives, building up a career in the company and know it so well,
yes,
and are so well connected to the purpose of the company. I think they would do an amazing job. And I think it's an advantage if you know the CEO well and you know the executive team well. You can also call bullshit quite quickly, right? When you get into the role. So maybe we look somebody like even with the diversity angle, which I fully support. It's just somehow, attractive to bring somebody in from the outside. It's sexy. It communicates well. It's vibrant. It's fresh. But sometimes you miss out on the one person, or maybe the one person that is ready, and who knows your organization and can make a deep, profound impact on the organization because they've been connected to the purpose for so long.
Yeah.
Right? So that's just, again, long answer, but that's just what I believe in.
No, yeah, it makes sense. You said this before when we spoke, but you said a good CHRO also needs to be a strong executive coach.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty strong belief. So I think, and it's also the hardest role of the chief HR officer. So as you know, the chief HR officer has many roles. Being a trusted advisor as coach is one of them. But I often believe that because we grow up in the field and we look at the HR generic elements of, TA, comp and ben, all the elements, that we forget that nowadays there's so much to know about being a good coach. How to build a rapport, how to drive particular separate sessions with your CEO about positioning yourself in that coach role, or how to talk to the executive team members in a different way than just you would do as a normal chief HR officer role. That I think being trained as a coach for a chief HR officer, or going through that training as a coach with the right reputable organization, is actually a big advantage, because it forces you to get to know yourself better, right? Obviously, when you go through a coach training, the right coach training, they force you to, if you want to help other people, you need to help yourself first, right? And to understand your own patterns, your own self-beliefs, your own self-talk, your own sub-personalities. Through that preparation, it prepares you so well for the different type of conversation you need to have with the executive team members, different than you would normally have about the business or about you being part of that team, but just positioning yourself as a trusted advisor and really a coach in the word like an external coach would do, to take them through session after session after session, to bring them somewhere, to bring up these topics. I think any chief HR officer would really benefit from it, because it just strengthens your role and it builds more wisdom and credibility, which is what you need as a chief HR officer, right? To be able to play that part.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important, and it's also important for the CEO, because these are tough nuts to crack, right? They're in often, many of them, if you talk to them, say, I'm in a shit role because I get all the punches, I get all the exposure, it's all on my neck. Nobody else can do it, so and therefore I do it. And of course, you start to talk to them, and of course they love it because it's such a special role, because it makes them part of this special group of people that have been given a unique opportunity to participate and have impact in the world. But they find it really, really hard, and there's nobody they can talk to. And if you then find in your chief HR officer somebody who's able and courageous enough to take off the I am your direct report hat, or I am your trusted advisor hat, but just to have somebody, just like an external coach would do, be able to sit you down on your travels, at your 6 o'clock, standing together in the office and everybody's left, to have that conversation, and then have that conversation to be well prepared and structured, and going somewhere where that coach is going to take you to your sub-personalities or looking for patterns which you can't break through. And then somebody who works with you then knows that. And that's amazing. For a CEO, I would always look for a chief HR officer who's able to do that. Yeah. So that's just me. Again, long answer, but that's just what I believe in.
How do you...
What do you think, Chris?
No, I was going to say, I was thinking to myself, who does the CHRO go to? Sorry, at the same time, because you're talking about who does the CEO go to, I was thinking also at the same on the other side of that, who does the CHRO turn to in the organization? Yeah. But I do agree with what you're saying, and also even though it's me and Shane, I do have a co-founder. Sometimes I do feel the same way, like I don't know who to talk to if I have an issue, or what if I have an issue with my co-founder? Who do I talk to? What if he has an issue with me? Who does he talk to? And we many times just suffer in silence and just don't say anything whatsoever, which then takes impact me personally on my mental health, for example. Right. So having someone, I've recently just got a coach for the first time, and it's making a massive difference. Just to have someone outside of the business, just to talk to. And just be me and be vulnerable and just say, I just don't know like how to do this, and just whereas I wouldn't really perhaps want to say certain things like that to the team, maybe lose a bit of credibility, or think Chris has no idea what he's doing. So I'm definitely seeing the value there, and I could see how having that CHRO CEO relationship it has to be very strong for the success of the organization.
But also, like in your case, your relationship with your co-founder, right? That's often your friends, right?
Which makes it even harder, by the way, for everyone listening. Like so much harder that it's a friend, and you getting into business with friends. Honestly, if I knew how tough it would be, I may not have started. If I'm being that honest, because it's caused points where some of my best friends, it's ruined relationships, some may be irreparable. I hope not, and it's tough having a co-founder as well who's your childhood friend. Like super tough. I'll
make sure I'll connect back with you after the show, and also make sure I send you a few. Because there's a company that you need to look at. And they're great in co-founder relationships. So I'll make sure I'll connect them.
How do you approach it then? How do you start that conversation? So you're working with many startup founders, different personality types, different stages of their business. What's your process? Kind of walk us through that. And also, I'm sure HR leaders that are listening right now could perhaps use some of those steps with their CEOs to start these conversations.
So first, what I try to do is, obviously, for me, it's slightly easier than the chief HR officer to talk to the CEO, because I'm unguarded. I have no stake. But what I usually try to do is first of all, you try to get to know each other, but at a deeper level. So I go systemic. So I look at family relationships. I know what are the patterns in life that when you were as a child, when you grew up, what do you pick up from your father? What do you pick up from your mother? that creates.
So you are just asking those questions. So you're just asking that individual.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And it's often just by the process of them answering my question, they're building connections in their minds. They're already discovering new patterns. It's just that first of all, they don't usually take the time. Second, nobody, but not a lot of people ask them that question.
Sure.
And I'm just the listener, right? I'm here to listen to you. I'm trying to get to know you, and I have a genuine interest. So that systemic piece is important, because the patterns that we now have in our lives, which are often patterns which are making work hard for us, often started when we were just kids growing up. Relationship with your brother, relationship with your sister, it's really important. So that's what I try to do in the first instance. And even sometimes a CEO really isn't open for that, right? They struggle with make themselves vulnerable to be able to go to that space. And I don't make it that hard for them, right? Sometimes I'm in like conversation 5 or 6, and then I go back because we need to go back to figure out where is it coming from, right? So that's what I try to do first. And then second, I try to really look at concepts of trust, like how do you build trust in your organization? How do you build connections, human connections with people? How do you build, what's your relationship with your board? And try to sort of dismantle sort of why these relationships sometimes work or not. And usually what I try to do, I go person by person, because that's where you start to identify patterns, right? And then I really focus on the individual first, and then only then I focus on the team. Obviously, that's where a CEO really would like to go fast.
Immediately, right? But you let's start with you first.
Yes. I said, no. That's just look later, and it depends a bit. Sometimes I talk to people every week, sometimes every 2 weeks, sometimes every month. But we will get to the team. We always get to the team. And then we start to look at sort of, okay, what does the team need? What is it that you need to do in your one-on-ones to prepare for that team meeting when you're all together? Because usually the one-on-ones are a way to prepare for that bigger meeting and get them all together. It's like, it's like a parent. My relationship with my kids is important, but it's way more important my relationship between my kids, right? It's way more important. And that's what I need to focus on. And that's where I also would try to get them to look at that relationship and observe that relationship, sometimes even shadow their own teams to see how they interact in the meeting. So I get them to go out of their sort of, okay, I need to run this meeting, try to get their chief of staff or somebody else to run it, so they can observe more, see the interaction, see the chemistry. And then of course we try to decipher that in our coaching conversations and just try to improve it. For many CEOs, what I find is that they struggle with intimacy, how really to build a human connection with somebody, how to get personal. They often hate small talk, right? They don't want to talk about sports or what happened on the weekend.
Yeah.
They want to talk performance. They want to talk about business, but often that is the space where we need to go first to build a relationship, to get the other person to open up. So that's where I take them, Chris. And then obviously, when we're a bit down the road, we talk about culture, we talk about process, we talk about organizational setup. Being the people that we are and the team that we've created, we've all been there, so we can go to that place. Mm-hmm. And I think usually, we work with people like 2 or 3 years sometimes, and I think then they should switch maybe to somebody else. But I think it's that first 2 years you can talk or bring him you can bring him to a place where work isn't that hard for them, and building a team is more enjoyable for them. So that's basically what I do, Chris, if that answers your question.
No, you've more than answered it. I love that. Thank you for walking us through it. It's super interesting, and I could see a lot of synergy between what you would do as a CHRO with the CEO. Again, you're a coach, right? Yeah. It's the same. You could have did the exact same, and I'm sure you did the exact same process when you were a CHRO, right? With your CEO.
Yeah, I think you try to do that. I mean,
as much as you can, of course.
In Qatar, it works slightly different because it's just different culture. different CEO, I guess.
That must have been interesting. Yeah, the cultural element of it.
Very interesting. But it was a really good learning experience. Mm-hmm. But as a chief HR officer, I think if I would go into a role like that, I would obviously be aware of my role, right? But I would try. Sometimes what you have to do, you get an opportunity to interview for the role, but you get to know the CEO in such a way that is this somebody that I can coach, right? That's the way I would look at it. And I can't speak for all the chief HR officers.
How would you determine that?
Yes.
What kind of question would you ask to try and hit, what kind of question would you ask to gauge something?
I would explain what I do. I would explain my style. I would be honest, because I've promised. And I've made this mistake, and no doubt many of us have, but I've made this mistake of wanting the role so badly that I would just interview.
You say what you want. You say what you think they want to hear, essentially.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's human, right?
Yeah.
But now, I'm a bit more experienced, a bit more older. I learned enough from my wife and my kids, enough to be honest. And now I promise myself that I'm just not going to work for the wrong manager, right? I just, for me to make it work, even in an interim, I just need to be able to have the connection with the CEO or with the executive team. And I would just explain what I do. I would explain my style, like this is how I work. I'd be honest about it, right? I would say I'm not as strong here. Most likely you don't want to take me for a role where you're in this phase of the company. And I would explain that next to all my wonderful chief HR officer qualities, as all of us have, I'm also a coach. And I believe that coaching is important. And I believe that in my role, it's also important to coach you as a chief HR officer. And that brings me, if you don't mind me going back to a previous question you asked,
go for it.
Chris, and I think I do want to answer that, is that often the chief HR officer doesn't have a coach, right? We think of we take care of our flock.
Yeah, exactly.
We take care of everybody around us. We just don't take care of ourselves. And for the companies that we coach now fortunately, we also coach the chief HR officer. And that's a wonderful relationship, because it's almost like they're double lonely. They need to be able to, do all this work and make everybody sort of happy and feel connected and balanced and mature and build the connections. Sometimes, also, covering an area where the CEO is traditionally not so strong is building the connection. And then who helps you, right? And so I really advocate for the chief HR officer to get a coach, to make, to enjoy, like you were enjoying that, the wonderful connection with somebody who is on your side, who wants to talk to you, who makes time for you, who listens, who tries to unravel the connections that you don't see by yourself, and then enjoy that. I mean, I would encourage any chief HR officer to also do that. So a bit of a sidestep, Chris.
No, I'm so happy you touched on that, because it comes up a lot. And I always say it, like, who does the CHRO turn to? Right, in the business, and many times there's no one. And both on the podcast but also offline in private conversations, they mention that to me a lot. There's a big stress, right? That and it ends up being their family or their husband or their wife that is the person who's the bearer of the brunt of those conversations.
And sometimes, look, I mean, I learn a lot from my wife too, right? And so that's a wonderful coach relationship, although it's a different relationship. And I believe the chief HR officer network is strong, right? So we all know each other, and like we have these places, including yourself, your organization, Chris, which bring us together. But it's often not the forum where we say, he's not listening to me for the 17th time, and I feel naked because I'm exposed, right? And I have the whole executive team all over me for not getting this clear, and it's controversial, and it's hard for the CEO to talk about, and I don't know what to do. And if you can then turn to your coach, and obviously we all need to get the right one, then that's somebody we spar with. That's somebody who helps us, because again, work doesn't have to be so hard, right? We don't have to do it alone. So get a coach, step over it, get over it and get a coach and enjoy it. Right?
Yeah.
Like you do.
Yeah. What are some of the, I don't really know how to phrase this question, but I'm just interested to know, someone who's not working currently in a CHRO role, what are some of the things and frustrations that you've had over the years that perhaps you couldn't talk about publicly because you're in a role that now perhaps you can share with our audience of like, these are some things to look out for on your CHRO journey? Some frustrations, because we always talk about the great things that are happening, but not many times are people talking about the difficult, hard stuff as well. So has anything come to mind?
Well, I think what comes to mind is that, and this is just personal, right, Chris? I always try to, come in with, like all of us do, with sort of, okay, these grand plans and these grand sort of longer term trajectory. And then we come in and we see basic stuff is broken, basic process is broken. And then what I try to do while I try to fix these longer term things and, try to bring in a more sophisticated way of running succession planning, better connected workforce planning with our long-term strategy, bringing process orientation in, etc. I also need to do the basic stuff, or payroll doesn't work, or this doesn't work. And I've often found that it's really hard to do both at the same time. And I've often made mistakes, right? By trying to fix it and getting all this process work done, burdening my HR team with that, while I also try to get into this modern place, this innovative place, and I burn them out, right? And I know that now. So that's often where I get frustrated. And I think I would try most likely to fix the longer term perspective first. It's often, you bring water to the sea, or you have this bucket where water drips out, because I know. But it's often the place where you get most credibility to be able to fix these things later, right? Or maybe where you keep your energy up for yourself the longest, right? Because it's a hard space to be in, to fix basic processes, while also there you create your own expectation of, I will fix succession planning, and I will fix leadership development, and I'll make us the most sexy employment brand on LinkedIn. All these promises that we come in, we're going to change the world. We always, I don't know,
yeah.
Often many of us do, but then we start to realize that basic stuff is broken, and we fix that, all our energy goes there. I think we need to, deliver upon the promise first, build the credibility, and then create the energy a bit later to fix all these basic processes.
Really?
That's just what
Interesting. Yeah. No, I love that.
Maybe controversial, I don't know, but maybe learning from how hard it is to really to fix all that basic stuff.
I always hear that frustration in our workshops that we used to do all over the world, our face-to-face, where we'd have 30 chief people officers. That would always come up as a frustration. Those basic, and it ended up. I think many of them took the same approach as you. Do those things and then build up the energy, and then sort that out later. It's not ideal, but it's you got to choose your battles along the way.
Well, and I think so, and I think maybe my response is not always that fair, right? Because you have to fix these basic things, and they have to work well. But at the same time, all of us, we have people that we follow, people that we admire or are secret admirers to, and I have a few of these, and they've been in the role for a long time. And what I see them do, obviously it's a bit, I'm not in their company, so I don't see everything that they do. But what I see them do is this, they keep going long term, they keep being sort of innovative, they keep, taking the podium and creating credibility for their team by being so innovative and by creating this new. And with that, I think they also built the process around new and around innovative. So maybe they're in a better, in a way smarter than I am, because I was fixing maybe the old, and they're just creating the new, but in new, creating these robust processes. And I think I learned from that. I think, and they seem a hell of a lot more happier than I was when I was chief HR officer.
And also at the same time, they're getting more buy-in, building more credibility with the team, and They're getting, more budget, and all of those other things along the way. Who are, if you had to, and this is going to be a tough one.
Sure.
Top three CHROs that you admire.
I think Lawrence Schuster of Lego is wonderful. I think he does wonderful things. I think Lena Nair from Unilever does wonderful things. Those are the two people that come to mind. And I think those two. I would say those two.
So, what are the attributes, competencies, etc., that make those people stand out to you? That you think that CHROs, chief people officers, need to succeed?
I think for me, if you just take these two, they really choose their battles. They know where they would like to be famous for, right? And they stick to it. It's a year-long journey. They don't waver from it. They're consistent. They're predictable. They create advocacy in large scale in their company, including outside, which pressures, of course, which brings pressure into their company as well. And they make it sexy. They make it sort of appealing. Yes. They do. And I think it's really powerful. And they use people like yourself, not use, but they build
a good, strong personal brand as well.
Yeah. That's me. If you look at Lena, I'm not sure when this has been, when you put this on your website, but she's just been appointed as a CEO.
I was going to ask you about that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. I think, how do you got that done? It's really wonderful.
But I think it's through what you've already explained. Alina's always been literally. By the way, before you mentioned those two, I already knew that. How crazy is that? I knew you was going to choose. I definitely knew you were going to choose Lena, and I was thinking Lauren. And the fact that you chose them is, and I'm being serious, I'm not just making it up. I definitely knew you was going to say Lena, because again, you perfectly described how she's always looking forward, right? And she's, they just hosted their own future of work summit, their own internal future work summit, right?
How cool is that?
Last week, right? And she's a LinkedIn influencer, and she's and again, she's putting that pressure back in on the organization, because they're putting it out to the public. This is what we're going to do, right? To their customers, their investors, their people. They have to then walk the walk internally and make that happen.
And Chris, I think at the same time when we're having this conversation, I'm pretty sure listeners will think, but inside their organization, there's this not right and that's wrong. I know, it's no doubt, it's all true. That said, they're willing to put themselves out of there. They have a vision. They don't try to do everything right, but they create this enormous appealing brands. Also as an employer
100%.
For their organizations. So, and that's important, right? And they, by creating that voice externally, they will have this voice internally too, right? And look, I can struggle to fix this payroll process in Germany, or I can create this following where if I would step up in the executive team and say, we need to fix gender diversity and have all of their voices, all of their ears, that's where I have an impact. And I think that's what they do.
Yeah.
So, I think it's...
I'm so happy I asked you that question now. That was led us down this road. And I'm seeing a lot of people since the Lena's announcement to be the CEO of Chanel talk about, is this the beginning of the move of CHRO into CEO? Like, I'm seeing a lot of headlines around that. Do you think that this is the start of something... obviously we've seen a few of those transitions happen, but not many.
Yeah. I think I'm not sure. And that's not to say that I don't see it happening, but I do believe that many of the chief HR officers are already a really good CEO in their companies. They just don't have the title. I think I just see them being, I just believe the role is highly impactful, right? And I will also believe in the triangle between the CEO, CFO, and the chief HR. And in many ways that they really support the company in the way that they also provide the clarity and focus that the company needs, right? They also build resilience in their organizations. It's just that they don't have the CEO title.
I see what you're saying. They don't need to have the CEO title to have that impact.
They don't, no.
Yeah.
And often, but what I do see is, and maybe that is the connection, Chris, I do see that the chief HR officers are getting much more used to the external exposure.
Yes.
And that's often where the CEO is strong at.
I'm seeing that now.
Right?
Like earlier on when I started this show, it was very hard to get CHROs involved in speaking externally, talking about being vulnerable and talking about the great work that they're doing. And that's why I started this show in the first place, because I was hearing about it. I was hearing about it behind closed doors, but I wasn't hearing about it. And I was like, why are you not talking about this? Why are you not sharing? Why are you not sharing? This is amazing, right? And they were like, oh, not sure. And now you're right. Actually, we get tons of emails every week now from CHROs saying, can I come on the show to talk about these new projects? And that was unheard of just even a few years ago. And they're excited to get out there. They understand the importance of building their brand as well. So listen, I have to end the show at some point. I feel like we need another one, but I'm so happy to have you on the show. I'm so happy that I can see the energy you have for the work you're doing, and all of those startup founders and all those companies you're working with are super lucky to have you on board.
And so are we. Right?
Yeah, no, of course. It's a match made in heaven. So before I let you go, if people, where can people learn more about you? If the CHROs listening want to coach, where can they contact you?
Well, this is a bit commercial, but I mean, our website is boon.co.com. So boon.co.com. My email is at boon.co.com. And look, I'm on LinkedIn. They can just look me up. And I think what we try to do is excel at is to respond. So we always pick up the phone. So that's how they can reach out.
Amazing. And for everyone listening, those links are already in the description to make life easier for you as well. So if you are a CHRO or a CEO, you need a coach, message Ad and the team. Ad Boon, not Boon. I've been saying it wrong all these years as well. But it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure, and enjoy the Christmas with the kids and the family. And I look forward to chatting with you next year.
Will too. I'll see you then, Chris.
Thanks. See ya.
Thanks for having me on the show. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.